Before we start, make sure to like the video and subscribe the channel. You're probably picturing something noble, a blacksmith in some warm glow of firelight, muscles rippling under soot and sweat, forging a perfect sword, a craftsman with pride in his work, maybe respected by his village. You're thinking of armor, hammers, iron glowing like lava, and a man with calloused hands and purpose. But that picture is a lie. You wouldn't want this job. You really wouldn't. Because being a blacksmith in the Middle Ages, say sometime around 1270 in a rural English shire, meant waking up in pain, working through pain, and going to bed in pain. And the next day, you'd do it again. Let's step into that day. It starts before dawn. Chickens might be stirring, but the blacksmith has been up for half an hour. There's no clock, only sky. The hearth must be relit, embers coaxed back to life. Sometimes they're dead cold, which means you'll need kindling. Sometimes dung, sometimes thin-cut brambles soaked in animal fat. It smells like rot and smoke, and it clings to your nostrils. Most blacksmiths didn't own the forge, not truly. It might be land rented from a manor lord or from the village reeve. Some forges were mobile, crude iron carts on wheels, pushed from hamlet to hamlet, offering repairs for shoes and ploughs. But stationary ones were more common in settled towns, and inside that little shack there was no glamour, just the overwhelming heat of a charcoal fire and a rough-hewn anvil. Tools were expensive. Hammers were made by smiths for other smiths. Tongs, chisels, punches, swages. If you didn't make them yourself, you were in debt to someone who did. So most blacksmiths spent a chunk of each year working not for coin, but to pay off the tools they needed to keep working. Now the real job begins. It might be horseshoes today or plowshares. Nails, too. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Nails were valuable. So valuable that when a building was torn down, people pulled the nails out and reused them. A good nail had to be square, strong, and roughly uniform, and every single one was made by hand. Hammered, twisted, split if necessary, and cooled in. A barrel of brown, reused water. The blacksmith's back hurts from standing bent at a strange angle. His eyes sting, not just from smoke, but from something worse. Scale. That's the flakes of iron oxide that fly off during forging. They're hot and sharp, and they land in eyes and noses and lungs. There was no such thing as eye protection, or gloves, or earplugs. The ringing in the ears never goes away. Let's talk about heat. Not the warm, comforting glow of a hearth, but the punishing, lung-scarring heat of a forge fire fed by bellows. The blacksmith spends hours working the bellows, forcing air into the fire to make it hot enough, white hot, ideally, for iron to soften. That's roughly 2000 degrees, 1093 degrees. Even with gaps in the wooden walls, the little shop fills with smoke and heat. In summer, it's unbearable. In winter, better, but your hands go numb between swings. Now you might think he made weapons. Axes, swords, daggers. But most of that work went to specialist armourers or royal smiths in cities like York or London. A village blacksmith rarely touched swords, unless repairing one owned by a local knight. No, what he made were things nobody wanted to think about, but everybody needed. Shackles, scythes, brackets for wooden carts, locks with no keys, hooks for slaughtering pigs, iron hoops for barrels, nails, so many nails. He might go weeks without seeing a single coin. Some villagers paid in onions, others in barley. The miller offered flour, and the shepherds wool. If someone was generous, they might give salted fish. But the real currency was obligation. If the reeve needed something fixed, it got done. If a traveling official broke a hinge, the smith stopped everything and served him. Saying no meant punishment. in taxes, in reputation, or worse. The smith was always under the boot of someone, slightly more powerful. By midday, the blacksmith's clothes are soaked with sweat and soot. His fingernails are blackened, some cracked to the quick. His right arm throbs from the uneven weight of the hammer, while his left wrist aches from gripping tongs. The tools themselves conduct heat, meaning if you pause too long mid-strike, the handle burns your hand. The smell. A mix of burning hair, hot iron, old sweat, animal grease, and ash. Your clothes never stop smelling like that. Not even after a full rinse in the river. And yes, disease lingered here too. The dust and particles that floated around the shop. Charcoal soot, crushed stone, rust flakes. They settled in lungs. Some blacksmiths developed a rattle in the chest by age 30. Others lost vision in one eye. And some, after years of inhaling the same filth, simply dropped dead. Apprentices fared even worse. Sent to fetch water, to stoke the fire, to work the bellows, tasks that required no skill but left you blistered, dehydrated, and half-starved. But here's something worse than pain. Repetition. The same motion, over and over, for decades. Strike, turn, strike, quench, strike, turn, strike, quench, until the day you couldn't lift the hammer anymore then. You trained a son if you had one. If not, you took in a boy from the village, and the cycle started again. But the blacksmith was needed. More than the carpenter, more than the cooper or thatcher. He was the reason carts rolled, gates closed, animals stayed shod and tools remained sharp. He didn't die rich, but when he died he was missed. Still, when he sat by the fire at night, hands cracked, eyes burning, feet blistered, did he ever think of leaving? Of walking away? Of choosing a different life? And if he had, would the village have let him? You said yes, so let's go back. The blacksmith hasn't rested yet. It's now late afternoon in a village somewhere in 13th century England. The sun hangs low, but the forge is hotter than ever. Smoke curls upward from the chimney hole, more of a crude square in the roof than anything intentional, and the scent of burning hooves hangs thick in the air. Because now it's time. For horseshoeing, and you wouldn't want to do it. The animal doesn't want to be there, it's agitated. It flinches at the smell of smoke, the hiss of water in the quench barrel, and especially the sound of hammer on anvil. Some village blacksmiths worked with a farrier, a separate profession trained in handling horses, but most couldn't afford that luxury. The smith was expected to do it all. The shoe must be heated, shaped, and cooled just enough to be nailed into the hoof while it's still pliable. Too hot, and the hoof burns. Too cold, and the shoe cracks. A misstep means injury to the animal, or to the smith. Many blacksmiths had broken toes, bruised ribs, or even lost fingers to angry kicks. There was no time to let it heal. You worked with a limp or you didn't work at all, and your hands never recovered. A medieval blacksmith's hands were a map of every mistake he ever made. Burn scars along the palms, splintered calluses, bruises that never fully faded. He might have been illiterate. Few blacksmiths could read, but he could feel temperature with a touch and judge weight with an instant glance. Still, his place in the village was always just slightly above. Labourers, but far below anyone with land. The reeve, the miller, even the tanner might eat better than the blacksmith, because while his job was critical, it wasn't admired. It was dirty, crude, ungodly, some even whispered. There were superstitions about iron and fire. That too. Much time near the forge could make a man's soul heavy with heat. Some said it was a place demons lived. Others feared the blacksmith's work because it changed nature, softened the hardness of metal, reshaped it, twisted it to man's will. It felt unnatural. So he wasn't invited to certain celebrations. He was tolerated, needed, yes, but rarely loved. He wasn't a priest or a merchant or a soldier. He didn't kill, he didn't heal, he didn't preach, he just fixed things. There was also the matter of taxes. The lord of the manor, or sometimes the church itself, could levy dues on blacksmiths based not on their coin, of which they had little, but on their output. Every year, the smith might owe a count of nails or horseshoes or iron braces to the manor's granary or stable. If he failed to meet quota, he might be fined. If he was fined too many times, he might lose his forge entirely. And you couldn't just pack up and move. Most smiths were tied to their land through custom, obligation, or debt. The tools were heavy. The anvil alone might weigh over 100 pounds. The forge stones, heat-treated and laid by hand, were not mobile. If he left, he started from nothing, so he stayed. There's a moment late in the day when he wipes his hands on the same rag he's used for months. It's black with grease. He pulls a splinter from his finger, spits on a burn, and drinks from a cracked wooden cup filled with beer that's gone sour in the sun. That's his supper. Maybe some cheese, maybe dried onion. A crust of bread from the miller's wife, if she remembered. Then he finishes the day's list. He checks the iron gate hinges ordered by the reeve. They're not perfectly even, but they'll hold. He sets aside a few sharp nails for the barrel maker and lays out the blade he started for a scythe. It's not yet curved right tomorrow. Outside night falls, insects buzz, smoke rises, but the blacksmith has one more job, a small one, at the edge of the hearth, a pin, the length of a thumb, for a village girl's spinning wheel. She came by 3 days ago, wide-eyed, asking if he could fix it. It's not valuable, but he said yes. And now, in the dark, after everything else, he sits by the coals reshaping the pin with gentle taps. It's the only quiet thing he'll do today. And maybe in that moment, he thinks of the boy he once was. The apprentice who came into a forge with no idea what heat meant, who learned the hard way what a blister feels like, how fire makes your back scream, how anvils ring in your bones. And he wonders, how many more years can I do this? When will my arm finally give out, and when it does, who will hammer in my place? The forge is cold now. The embers that once roared are just ash, pale, soft and grey. The anvil rests untouched. The hammer leans against the wall. Everything is silent, but you can still feel it. The weight of a lifetime spent hammering iron until the bones in your hand refused to bend. The blacksmith's shop is empty, but it doesn't feel peaceful. It feels used. Like something gave everything it had and walked away quietly without ever being thanked. Let's talk about the end, because blacksmiths didn't retire. They worked until they couldn't. In most villages there was no pension, no rest home, no gentle easing out of life. The smith slowed down, yes, forged fewer nails, let apprentices swing the heavy blows. But even in old age, he was expected to work, just a little less. He might sit more often or leave some iron slightly crooked or take 2 days to do what once took one. But quitting altogether, that wasn't done, unless you were very rich. And a village blacksmith never. You worked until you couldn't stand up, and when that moment came, your body stopped before your name did. It usually started with the arm. The wrist gave out first. The same joint turned thousands of times a day, worn down from repetition. Painful, stiff, swollen. There was no term for arthritis, but they knew it, called it iron hand or cold bone, or sometimes just the hark, then the lungs. Blacksmiths breathed smoke every day, not just fire smoke, but the floating dust of iron and charcoal, microscopic, invisible. Over the years, it settled into the chest like sediment in a riverbed, It didn't kill quickly, but the cough lingered, the breath shortened, the fatigue deepened. He might work sitting down now, or not at all, and if he had no son, no apprentice, the village found someone else, maybe a younger man from another shire, maybe the miller's cousin who knew a bit of metalwork, maybe no one, and they rode 2 miles to the next forge whenever they needed a hinge or a nail. The forge sat quiet then. The tools rusted. It happened more than you think. The blacksmith died quietly. Not in battle, not at the altar, not in glory, but in his home, often alone, surrounded by worn-out tools, smoke-blackened rafters, and the smell of old iron. Sometimes he was buried near the forge, other times just in the churchyard beneath a small wooden cross. No grand epitaph, no carved stone. But his work lived on. That gate that never squeaked again, that barn door that held through winter storms, the iron hook that kept a family's food hung out of reach from rats, the pot stand, the latch, the lock that outlasted its key, all forged by a man whose name would never enter a history book. Yet here's the quiet truth of it. Without the blacksmith, there is no village, no harvest, no market, no wheel, no war, no peace, because iron was the blood of the Middle Ages and the blacksmith was the beating heart. You never noticed him when he was alive, but the moment he was gone, everything stopped working. And maybe that's the most exhausting thing of all, that after years of sweat, scars, and smoke, your legacy isn't even your name. It's a nail, bent just slightly, holding up a barn. Jaw that creaks every time it swings open, and no one knows you made it. You're standing in the shadow of genius, arched stone stretching across miles. A triumph of Roman engineering. Tourists photograph it now. They marvel at the symmetry, but no one ever thinks about the men who built it, or worse, the ones who maintained it. Because being a Roman aqueduct, worker wasn't about glory or mathematics or designing clever gradients across landscapes. It was about crawling through darkness, shoveling sludge, wading through ankle-deep water that reeked of moss, rats, and mildew, and no one cared if you drowned. Let's begin not in the marble forums of Rome, but in the long, low tunnels underneath. Where slaves and poor citizens were sent to keep the water flowing for everyone else. The system was complex. Aqueducts didn't just move water, they delivered it across valleys, hills, and into public fountains, bathhouses, and wealthy homes. It was all based on gravity. A slow, steady slope that required endless precision and constant maintenance, because the moment a crack appeared, the moment sediment began to build, the flow slowed, then stopped, and then you got blamed. The aqueduct worker's job wasn't to admire engineering. It was to get in, to crawl inside tunnels barely wide enough for a man to turn around, sometimes 3 feet high, sometimes 2. No light, no torch, no windows. No escape. Some passages were carved directly into rock, limestone mostly, which meant sharp edges. Others were lined with concrete, coated in waterproof plaster, known as opus signinum. It was reddish and smooth until it cracked, and when it cracked, you went in. Let's say it's year 92 CE. The Emperor Domitian rules. He's obsessed with discipline, precision, cleanliness. His aqueducts must run or someone gets whipped. You're part of a repair crew sent to inspect a suspected blockage beneath the Aqua Claudia. First, you strip down. You can't wear a tunic. In there. Too loose, too wet, too heavy. You carry a scraping tool. Sometimes it's just a stick with a metal loop at the end. Sometimes it's a primitive trowel. You have a small clay lamp, but the oil runs out quickly. Most of the time you feel your way in the dark. Inside the tunnel it's silent except for dripping water and the sound of your own breath echoing off stone. The walls sweat. Roots dangle from above. Spiders crawl past your face. Bats flutter somewhere ahead. The air is cold and wet but heavy, like breathing through a damp cloth. Then you reach the problem. A thick buildup of calcium, or a collapsed stone, or a rat's nest clogging the flow. Your job is simple. Clear it. Fast. Quietly. Because if the water doesn't reach the city baths, someone higher up will demand punishment. You chip, scoop, rinse, and keep moving. Your fingers wrinkle from constant moisture. Your knees bruise from crawling on hard stone. Your back aches from hunching for hours. And there's the filth, because while Roman aqueducts were marvels, they weren't clean. Leaves got in. Animal. Droppings, dust, algae, moss, dead birds. Sometimes worse. One record mentions a child's body pulled from a channel. No one knew how he got in. The smell wasn't sewage, not quite, but it lingered somewhere between rot and mildew. You got used to it. You had to. After crawling for 30, maybe 40 meters, you finally reach a maintenance shaft. It's a vertical tunnel carved upward toward daylight, covered with a wooden lid on the street above. Maybe someone's waiting. Up there to pull you out, maybe not. You tie a rope around your chest and wait for the tug. You brace your feet on slippery stone, grip the edges of the shaft, and hope. If the rope breaks or they drop it, you fall backward into a narrow pit with no ladder. There were no safety rules, no rescue teams, no gloves, no masks, just you, water, and stone. When you reach the surface, you're soaking wet, covered in grime and shaking from the cold. There's no towel, no warm fire, maybe a crust of bread, dry skin of vinegar-diluted wine. Then it's off to the next blockage. You were paid in sesterces, small Roman coins that barely bought a day's food. Some aqueduct workers were enslaved, especially in the provinces. Others were hired laborers, citizens without land, desperate enough to crawl under the city for a wage. The wealthy above never saw you. They turned the tap and bathed in hot water. They complained when pressure was low, but they never thought about you. Your world was darkness, mildew, and silence. And even if you lived to old age, which was rare, your body paid the price. Crushed knees, rotting teeth from mineral-heavy water, chronic chest infections, and permanent hearing loss from the tunnel echoes. There were no statues for aqueduct workers, no names carved in marble, no triumphal arches, just a channel of running. Water, and a long-forgotten man beneath it, scraping limescale in the dark. But that raises a strange question. Why did they keep doing it? Was it fear? Duty? There were rules for everything in Rome. How to wear your toga, when to speak in the forum, what incense to burn before dawn sacrifices. Laws about land, about fish, about burial. But down in the aqueducts, the rules faded. Because once you were underground, crawling through the bones of the city, the law didn't reach you. No one was watching. No one cared. You see, the aqueducts were the empire's arteries. At the surface you saw their grandeur, the Aqua Appia, Aqua Marcia, the mighty Aqua Claudia stretching across valleys with perfectly spaced arches. People pointed at them, praised them, gave them names. But those were just the visible parts. Most aqueducts ran underground. Miles and miles of dark, wet stone tunnels carrying water to cities, towns, bathhouses, fountains, and private estates. They dipped under hills, curved around temples, even cut through mountains with stubborn Roman geometry. And keeping all that water flowing meant men had to go in. Maintenance crews, usually small, sometimes just a pair, were dispatched by overseers known as curatores aquarum. These were high-ranking officials, often former senators, who managed the water systems with pride, but they never descended. Not once. They sent you instead. Some workers were slaves, condemned men, prisoners, of war or debtors. Others were free but poor, barely scraping by. They took the job because there was no other work. Some had families to feed. Some owed taxes they couldn't pay. Some simply had nowhere else to go. There were no contracts, no tools provided, no guards at the entrance. You crawled in with your own knife or hook, a clay lamp if you could afford, oil and a piece of rag tied around your mouth to stop the worst of the slime from getting in. It didn't help much. The tunnels were long and often unmapped. Sometimes you got lost. One misstep and the water swept you off your footing. A shift in pressure, a sudden blockage, or a collapsed ceiling, and you were pinned in darkness. A few crews never returned. The city didn't search, they were replaced by others. Some maintenance shafts were barely big enough to lower a bucket. Others were clogged with dead rats, collapsed tiles or jammed wooden beams that hadn't been cleared in decades. You learned to move quietly, not because someone might hear you, but because you might hear something. The slosh of rising water, the grind of rock shifting overhead, the squeal of something alive too far ahead to see. Once a record tells of a man who entered to clear sediment buildup and didn't return. When they lowered a torch the next day, they found his body pinned beneath a slab of collapsed concrete. He had tried to dig himself free with a shoe buckle. He'd left no family. No one claimed the body. They buried him in a ditch behind the maintenance yard. But there were worse fates than death. Some workers emerged with burns on their arms, from underground gas pockets igniting lamps. Others came out blinded by sudden shifts in pressure or frostbite from working in winter currents. One aqueduct near Pompeii had sulfur deposits. Crawling through that meant breathing a thick egg-like stink that seared the lungs. No one wanted that job. It was assigned to slaves. They were chained before they descended. There was also theft. The underground channels passed under homes, markets, temples, and criminals sometimes broke into the tunnels to tap the flow, rerouting clean water to private basins. So you weren't just a laborer. You were also an investigator. If you spotted illegal pipes or cracks where someone had carved a new channel, you were expected to report it. But if the thief found you first, you didn't report anything. You simply didn't return. Most aqueduct workers kept to themselves. They didn't boast. They didn't attend banquets. Their work clothes were ragged, stained permanently with lime and mold. Their hair was thin from exposure. Their skin cracked from moisture and lye. They weren't citizens in the way others were. They were ghosts of the water, essential but invisible, yet every day they crawled back in. Why? Because a man could survive that life. Barely. A few denarii, here and there. A shared room in a public insula. A wife who waited with half a loaf and a bowl of beans. And the knowledge, unspoken but deeply understood, that if you didn't go down there, no one else would. The bathhouses would close, the fountains would dry up. The fountains of the Thermae would sit still and cold, and the city that claimed to be eternal, it would stink of thirst and rot. But you kept the water moving, and when you looked back on your life, your cracked nails, your raw knees, your coughing lungs, you might wonder, was it worth it? Not for the coin, not for the praise, but maybe for something quieter, that for a time you were the reason Rome still flowed. Still, when you lay in bed, too sore to sleep, you had to ask yourself, what happens when even you stop going underground? You've gone back in, again. And this time it's different. Your knees don't work like they used to. You can't squat without pain. The lamp you carry, a small clay saucer of flickering oil, feels heavier. The air feels colder. The tunnel is narrower. Or maybe that's just your body growing older, stiffer, more reluctant to squeeze into places meant for silence and rats. It's been 20 years. 2 decades since you first descended into the aqueducts, beneath Rome. You were younger then, less cautious, less aware of how fragile bones really are. You didn't think about slipping or falling or being forgotten. Now you think about it every time. The channel walls are coated with that familiar sheen. Slick green moss, chalky calcium deposits, mineral build-up so dense it crackles under your sandals. You touch it. Flake some off. You know this place. You could find your way blindfolded. You have above you, Rome carries on. The clang of metal in a workshop, the calls of merchants on the street, the clatter of carts on uneven stone, water flowing. Everywhere, clean, cold, uninterrupted, because you keep it that way. But here's what no one tells you. Aqueducts don't fail all at once. They rot slowly. A drip here, a hairline crack there, maybe a stone that shifts in the night. The water keeps moving, but the damage deepens. And you patch, you fill, you smooth, you hope. You become an expert in slow decay. This tunnel is part of the Aqua Marcia, older than you, older than your father. Built in 144 BCE, still running, still serving the public fountains near the baths of Agrippa, still pretending to be perfect. But today, something's wrong. You were sent in because of a complaint. Water. Flow reduced, not stopped, just slower. No one above really cares. Not yet. But you do. Because you know what a slowing flow means. It means a blockage. It means collapse. It means danger. And it means you'll be the one to fix it. Or try, you. Wade deeper. The water is ankle high, but rising. You feel it in your legs. Cold. Steady. The tunnel narrows. You duck lower. Your back scrapes the ceiling. The walls weep with condensation. You pass a rat's carcass floating sideways. Your lamp sputters. You whisper to it like an old friend. Then you see it. The blockage. A partial ceiling collapse. Crushed stone. Roots tangled through the debris. A snapped clay conduit jammed sideways. The water pushes through but barely. Behind it, pressure, waiting, building. You kneel, start scraping, slowly, carefully. You don't want to dislodge the wrong stone. Every movement is a guess. There's no blueprint, no engineer above to advise. Just you, your instincts, and the creak of water behind the rubble. Your hand slips. A stone falls, the tunnel groans, you stop breathing, you wait. Silence, you reach in again, one more stone, one more shift, and then the pressure gives, not all at once, but enough. A surge of water rushes through, knocking your tools from your hands. You scramble back, the current battering your knees. Your lamp dies, you're in darkness now, you try not to panic. You know this tunnel. You've been here before. You crawl back by feel. Fingers on stone, feet against the current. The tunnel slopes upward. You remember this. 5 more meters, maybe 10. There's a ladder, a wooden shaft. If it hasn't rotted, you reach it. The rungs groan, your shoulder screams. You push upward. The trapdoor is heavier than you remember. You slam your palm against it. Once, twice. Again it opens, light. You blink, coughing water, dragging yourself out like a man reborn. A boy above stares at you, no more than 12, wide-eyed, holding the rope. You don't recognize him. Maybe he's new. Maybe he'll be you one day. You sit on the stone rim, soaked, shaking, blinking in the Roman sun. Behind you, down in the tunnel, water rushes free again. The blockage is gone. The city will have water tonight. The fountains will bubble. The baths will steam. The public will wash away the dust of the day, never knowing what was almost lost. You'll get no thanks. Your pays, if it comes, will be late. Your chest will ache tonight. Your knees will swell. Your wife will scold you for bleeding. Again. Your son will ask why your hands shake. You won't have an answer. And tomorrow they'll send you back, because the water never stops. The city depends on you, but it will never say so. And long after your name is gone, long after your body is buried in a ditch with no marker, the aqueducts will still carry water, and no one will remember the man who kept them from collapsing. But maybe that's what Rome was built on. Not emperors, not senators, not marble, but men like you crawling beneath the stone, scraping, fixing, enduring, so others could forget you ever existed. You've heard the phrase before, the Black Death. You've heard the stories of bodies piled high, of carts rolling through cobbled streets, of doors painted with marks, of silence. But silence is a luxury, because not everyone got to hide. Some people, the poorest, the filthiest, the most forgotten, had to keep working. Even when the plague came, even when the streets emptied, even when breathing felt like a gamble. Let's go to one of those streets. London, year 1349. Late summer. The stench is different now. Thicker, sweeter. Something about death makes the air syrupy. It clings to your tongue. The plague has been rolling through the city for months. It arrived on fleas, on rats, on ships from the south. Maybe from Genoa. Maybe from a sailor's coat. No one knows for sure, but it's here now. And you, a tanner's assistant, don't get to rest. You rise with the sun, or with the cough of your master, or with the screams of a neighbor. It doesn't matter. Sleep comes thin these days, like a film of mist. You barely feel it. The tanner's yard still smells the same. Urine, lime, and rotting hide. It's unbearable at the best of times. But in plague summer, it turns your stomach every time you breathe in. You gag quietly, then get to work. The hides don't stop needing soaking. The lime pits don't stir themselves. You use a paddle or your arm, or sometimes your foot, pushing raw skin through buckets of liquefied filth to strip the hair off. It splashes. It always does. You haven't washed properly in weeks. Not that water helps anymore. Someone told you the plague hates bad smells. That working near the tannery would protect you. Some kind of reverse logic. The stink keeps the demons out, they said. Maybe that's why you're still alive. Your fingers are raw from lime. The skin flakes. You no longer feel pain when it splits. Your knuckles stay swollen. Every few days, a new cut appears. You ignore them all. There's no time to stop. The tanner's family fled last month. They left him behind. He's too old to run, too stiff to travel. You stayed because where would you go? The countryside doesn't want city people now. No, one wants city people. The church bells ring more than usual. They don't stop for meals anymore, just deaths. And the death cart comes more often, drawn by men you used to know. Now wrapped in cloth soaked with vinegar, eyes wide behind masks, dragging the dead through alleys. You've seen them toss bodies like sacks. You've seen limbs hang from windows, too stiff to pull back inside. You've heard coughing behind. Doors that haven't opened in days. But the tanner still wants the leather dried, the hides cured, the orders filled. Someone in the countryside still wants boots, so you work. The market is closed, but the alleys hum with quiet exchanges. Rats everywhere. The dogs are gone. Too many corpses to compete with. You see people moving under cloaks, selling garlic, vinegar, charms. None of it helps, but you tried. You hung a sprig of rosemary from your neck, tied it with thread from your sleeve. You burned sage in the workshop. You even whispered a prayer, not because you believed it would work, but because saying something felt better than nothing. There are rumors now that the well is poisoned, that foreign merchants cursed the city, that sin did this. You nod along. Let people say what they want. But deep down, you know it's none of that. It's something no one understands. Something in the air, in the fleas, in the sweat of those who can't afford to hide. And still, the hides must be dried. You lift them out of the pit, dripping with foul water. You hang them from hooks, careful not to slip on the blood-slick floor. The flies are everywhere now. The sun burns the yard, turning every cent into something unbearable. You drink vinegar when you can. Not wine, that's for the rich. Vinegar cuts through the rot, at least in your mouth, and then it happens. You hear a cough. Not yours. Not the tanner's behind you, at the edge of the yard. A boy, maybe 10, maybe 12, skin pale, eyes red, a cough like tearing cloth. He's barefoot. You know what this means, you know what he carries, but he's just standing there staring. "Work," he says. You don't answer. He coughs again. And that's when you realize, even he has nowhere else to go. Even he is looking for something to do, something to trade for bread. You should send him away, you should yell, but you don't, because the truth is, you need help, you're tired. And this plague doesn't care how hard you work. It's coming for you anyway. And now you wonder, how long can you keep curing leather while the world around you rots? What happens when even the flies start to leave? You let the boy stay, not because it was wise or safe or kind, but because the yard was too quiet without another set of hands. And because somewhere in the back of your mind you knew everyone was dying anyway. The tanner barely speaks now. His cough has worsened. He spits into a bucket lined with old wool scraps. The spittle is thick and darker than it should be. You've stopped asking how he feels. He knows what's coming. You both do. The boy, you never ask his name, learns quickly. You show him how to paddle the hides, how to shift the soaking leather with a stick so it doesn't rot too quickly in the sun. You even show him where the salt is kept, in a half-broken barrel behind the shed. The smell doesn't bother him anymore, or maybe it never did. It's hard to tell how long it's been since he last washed. His hair is a matted clump of straw. His toes poke through his sandals. He scratches at flea bites constantly. You've given up worrying if that's how the plague spreads, through fleas, through breath, through sin. It makes no difference now. The hides must still be cured, even as the city around you unravels. Let's talk about curing, not metaphorically, literally. The process begins with soaking, not just in water, but in a foul mix of urine and lime. The ammonia in urine helps loosen the fat and hair from the skin. You used to carry buckets from the piss pot collector. He hasn't come by in weeks. Now you just leave a barrel near the alley. People fill it when they pass. No one asks questions. After soaking, the hides must be scraped. That's your job. Or the boy's now. With a dull blade, never too sharp, you pull the hair from the skin. It curls off in damp, greasy ribbons. Your hands ache from gripping the blade, from pulling the hide taut across the beam. Once stripped, the hide is rinsed again, then salted. The salt draws out the last of the moisture, preventing rot. But you're low on salt, always low. You use it sparingly now. A pinch here, a smear there. The hides dry slower this way. Some will spoil. You'll sell them anyway. There are fewer buyers now. The leather merchant hasn't been seen in days. You leave bundles outside the gate. Sometimes a coin appears, sometimes not. You've stopped caring. The work is more habit than business. The sky is grey most days, or maybe it's smoke from the constant fires. People burn things now. Clothing, bedding, entire houses. Trying to cleanse the air, trying to start over. You understand the instinct, you've considered burning the shop. But then what? At night you sleep inside, on a pile of stiff hides. They crack beneath your weight. The boy sleeps beside the warm lime vat. You've warned him not to fall in. If he does, you won't be strong enough to pull him out. You didn't say that part aloud, but he understands. You both cough now. Not always, not every hour, but enough. You wonder if it's in you already. If it's building behind your ribs, waiting for your weakest moment. Your breath is shorter when you wake. Sometimes your gums bleed, and yet the scraping continues. You still hear bells at dawn, still see carts rolling by, still see black crosses painted on doors. The priests no longer bless the bodies, they just nod. Swing the censer once, move on. There are too many. Even the gravediggers are collapsing now. You've seen people buried in ditches. You've seen, say, a dog drag a foot from one. You said nothing, because you had hides to finish, because someone out there, and some traveler, some soldier, some desperate soul, still needs boots, and you're the last tanner left in the quarter. The boy asks you, one morning, why do we keep working? You don't answer right away. You can't. Because what can you say? That routine keeps you alive? That motion feels better than stillness? That the sound of your blade against hide is the only proof you're still breathing? Or maybe it's something darker. Maybe you believe somewhere deep inside that work protects you. That if you just keep scraping, keep boiling, keep turning flesh into leather, the plague won't notice you. That the reaper, so busy with the wealthy, the idle, the clean, might pass over the ones already buried in stench and filth. You look at the boy. He waits for your answer, and all you can say is, because no one told us to stop, but you know the truth. The moment you stop working, you start dying. The yard is quieter now. The boy doesn't speak much. You've both learned there's no comfort in words, just sound. And too much sound reminds you of coughing, of bells, of mourning. Better to keep quiet. Let the flies hum. Let the scrape of the blade and the squelch of wet leather fill the space between you. The tanner died 3 days ago. You found him slumped beside the hide rack, a smear of black along his jaw. His eyes were glassy, staring at the sky. His hands still clutched a bundle of rags. You wrapped him in an old hide, carried him out the back gate. You didn't mark the spot where you buried him. The ground was too hard. The plague pits were full. No priest, no prayer, no coin for Karen. He wouldn't have wanted it anyway. Now, the shop is yours. By silence, not inheritance. You never took an oath, never signed a scroll. You were never apprenticed properly, but now there's no one left to dispute it. You work slower. Not because of the grief, and that left you months ago, but because your body betrays you now. Your joints resist the rhythm, your breath shallows, your hands lose grip. The plague hasn't struck full force, but you can feel its fingers brushing. Your ribs. The boy has taken over the heavier tasks. You don't ask where he learned. He watches you work and mirrors it, scrapes as you scrape, lays the hides out in the same crooked pattern. Sometimes you see him mutter as he moves, counting, steps repeating motions, as if building a ritual. Maybe that's all tanning ever was. A ritual. A transformation of the dead into something useful. A kind of resurrection without glory. And now you're part of it. The city has changed beyond recognition. The market square is silent. Chickens wander free, cats grow bold. Entire families vanish overnight. The baker's door is chained shut, but the bread is still on the counter, hardened like clay. You don't visit anymore. You don't leave the yard. When someone wants leather, they hang a cloth from the alley wall. You leave the bundle at dusk. If they leave a coin, fine. If not, you don't chase them. There's no use anymore, in fairness. You've noticed the plague doesn't kill the same way anymore. In the first months, it was fast, brutal. People would fall ill and die before sunset. Now it lingers. Toys with few days of fever, purple spots, endless coughing. You've stopped trying to guess who will go next. The boy asks less now. He watches your chest when you sleep, just to make sure it moves. Once you woke up and found him holding your wrist gently, checking for your pulse. You said nothing. That night, you gave him the good blade, the one with the wrapped handle, the one the tanner never let anyone touch. He didn't say thank you, just nodded. It was enough. You sometimes wonder what you'll leave behind. Not much. No family name, no coin, no story anyone will retell, just hides. Piles of them. Cured well, scraped smooth, weatherproofed. Ready for soles, saddles, belts. You leave your initials scratched into a few. Not all. Just enough that if someone sees it, years from now, they'll know someone stayed behind to finish the work. And maybe that's all history ever is. The record of someone who didn't stop, who kept boiling piss, stirring hides, scraping hair, while the world collapsed around them. Your last day comes quietly. You feel it in the morning, a pressure in your chest, the looseness in your joints. You try to stir the lime vat and drop the paddle. Your fingers won't close around it. The boy hears the splash. He says nothing. You sit by the rack instead. Watch the leather drip. Count the flakes of salt drying white on the skin. At dusk, you lie down on a blanket of half-cured hides. It smells sharp, metallic, familiar, not pleasant, but real. The boy sits nearby, carving a strip of scrap into cord. You watch him. He works with the good blade. You feel no fear, just stillness. You cough once, then again. The boy looks up. You nod. He nods back. And that's the end. No funeral. No name in a book. No line in a chronicle. Just a body that stopped moving in a place no one cared to remember. But the leather lives on. Someone wears your work, walks with it, sleeps on it, never knowing who made it, or how close that craftsman came to dying with each breath. And maybe, in some quiet way, that's enough. Not everyone in the Middle Ages worked the fields. Not everyone wielded a hammer or plowed the soil or knelt to serve a bishop. Some people just stood, for hours, for days, for years, by a gate, at a bridge, beside a muddy road barely wider than a wagon. They were toll keepers. You didn't notice them in paintings. They're rarely mentioned in stories. They left behind no masterpieces, no armies, no scandalous letters, but they stood between places, between towns, between power and powerlessness, between one village and the next, and if you wanted to cross, you paid. Let's go to Burgundy. Roughly 1311, a small village called Charnay, a day's walk west of Mâcon. A stone bridge arches over a sluggish creek, not wide, not deep, but important. It connects traders from the Saône River to the hills beyond. And right at the end of that bridge, a hut, a pole, and a man wrapped in layers of wool and stubbornness. He's the toll keeper, and this is his life. His name isn't recorded. Few ever are. He might be called Etienne or Michel or just Le Portier. His family rents the position from the local seigneur, a modest fee in silver, paid each year in exchange for the right to collect tolls from travelers. It's not a salary. It's a gamble. If trade is heavy, he profits. If floods come or war blocks the road or plague scares merchants away, he earns nothing. But the Lord still demands his share. Always. He sleeps in the booth, a wooden shack barely tall enough to stand in. Inside, a stool, a box of iron weights, a coffer with 2 locks, and a ledger bound with scraps of parchment. Outside, a long pole used to bar the path. If someone approaches without paying, he lowers it. The pole is heavy, the rope often frays. He repairs it himself. Toll rates are painted on a plank outside. Crude pictograms for the illiterate. 1 denier for a man on foot. 2 for a man with a donkey. 4 for a cart with 1 ox. 6 for 2 oxen. 1 egg for local villagers, sometimes. Nothing for soldiers unless you're foolish enough to ask. He must remember every exemption, every feast day rule, every special permit from the abbey or the nearby mill. The job sounds simple. Stand, collect, nod, But it isn't. Not really, because people hate tolls. They argue, they plead, they lie. They claim their cart is empty. It isn't. They say they already paid. They didn't. They shout, they spit. They try to rush the gate when you blink. And sometimes they have friends behind them with cudgels, so the toll keeper must be stubborn. Not brave, that's a luxury, but firm. Firm enough to stand in the rain with frozen fingers and demand 2 deniers from a fish seller with a leaking cart and a bad attitude. The day begins before the sun. He watches for early travelers trying to sneak past in the mist. Sometimes he wakes to footsteps, scrambles out with his pole, shouting curses, only to find a stray dog. He eats hard bread, sometimes cheese, sometimes onion, always cold. Fires aren't allowed in the booth, too risky. One spark and the whole wooden hut would vanish. There are mice. There is damp. There is mold on the ceiling. The bridge never rests. Even in winter it draws the desperate. Bakers hauling sacks of rye, midwives rushing to a birth, monks with carts of parchment, beggars trailing at a distance, hoping for dropped coins. He sees it all, and he remembers none of their names, because to him, they're traffic, and to them, he's a nuisance. He marks each payment with a notch in the ledger. Some pages are stained with wine or blood. He keeps the coins in a box with 2 keys, one for him, one for the steward who visits every month to collect the Lord's share. If the numbers don't match, questions are asked. If they still don't match, punishments follow. So he records carefully, but numbers aren't the only thing he counts. He counts how many times the rain seeps into his boots, how often he bites his lip to stay quiet when insulted, how many days since he last saw his wife, who lives up the hill and tends their goats. The job is isolating. Travelers come and go, but he remains, rooted, forgotten, holding a stick in the mud while others pass through. And in those long hours, as frost gathers on the plank and his fingers lose feeling, he begins to ask himself, is this really a job? Or just a life sentence with a view? You've been here long enough now. You recognize the sound of wagon wheels before they crest the hill. You can tell a trader from a monk by how their donkey walks. You know which pilgrims will argue, and which ones will cross themselves, whisper a prayer, and hand you 3 deniers without complaint. The road teaches you patterns, but it also teaches you how quickly things can change. This week, a new rumor is drifting with the travelers. War, they say, or at least the start of one. A baron's feud has spilled across the hills. Something about stolen grain or a betrothal gone wrong, or maybe a soldier insulted in a tavern. No one's quite sure. But there are fewer carts now, fewer smiles, more eyes darting toward the woods, and more people trying to cross without paying. The toll keeper, you, have to be cautious now. Too cautious, maybe. You lower the pole more slowly. You weigh each coin 3 times. You look behind. Every cart, not for fraud, but for men with blades. You sleep with your staff within reach. The bridge is narrow, that helps. But the job, Newsom, it's starting to break you. You've begun dreaming of the gate, not closing it, not opening it, just holding it. Forever. The pole in your hands. Rain on your face. Feet rooted to the mud. Travelers, passing, never stopping, never remembering you were there. You wake with a jolt, sometimes with a scream. Your wife doesn't sleep here anymore. The hut is too damp, too crowded. The last time she stayed, she caught a fever, spent 2 weeks coughing up blood. Now she visits once every 8 days, bringing dried lentils, goat cheese, and whatever gossip reached the village. She asks why you don't leave. You say nothing, because what would you do? You're not a smith, not a ploughman. You have no land. No guild, no skill except counting coins and reading people's eyes when they lie. And besides, this bridge is yours, at least in your mind. So you stay. The days pass in their sameness. A monk with bad shoes thanks you for your honesty. A soldier throws a coin at your feet and keeps walking. A beggar woman spits on the post and curses your children. You never had children. You keep notes in the ledger. Midday, 2 carts, donkey lame. Evening, merchant lied, underpaid. Let him pass anyway. Storm, no travelers, fireflies. Sometimes you write more. Not for the steward, just for yourself. Do they know I'm still here? Would the bridge fall if I left? What does the road remember? And then at one morning was something different. A man arrives before dawn, cloaked, silent. His horse is well fed. His boots are dry despite the morning dew. He doesn't speak. He hands you a wax-sealed scroll, a decree. You read it slowly. Your hands tremble. The toll is being moved. The route is changing. A new path is being built 3 miles south, stone paved, wider, flatter, royal funded. You ask the man, when? He shrugs, soon. And with that, he rides on. You sit with the scroll in your lap, the bridge yawning behind you. The road feels colder, like it heard. Soon the traffic thins. Merchants turn away before reaching you. A few villagers whisper apologies as they pass. They won't come back. The new road is faster, safer, better for wagons, and suddenly you're no longer part of the journey. You're just the man in the booth, beside the bridge that no one needs. You could leave, but you don't. You still lower the pole for birds, still mark your ledger when the wind shifts, still wait for coins that never come. Because what else is there if you stop keeping toll? So what is left of you? The bridge is empty now, not abandoned. No, it still stands. Its stones are solid, older than you, built by hands long dead. The pie. Water still runs beneath it, slow and brown, feeding reeds that grow taller every year. But the road has moved, and so has the world. You don't bother opening the toll gate in the morning anymore. The pole remains tied, the rope frayed and stiff. The wood swells when it rains. You leave it there leaning against the booth like an old soldier's spear, still upright but no longer sharp. Days pass without footsteps. Nights are filled with crickets, not carts. Your ledger is nearly full. You keep writing anyway. Market. Day no one passed. Storm, fox near bridge. Woman's voice on the far bank, didn't cross. 4 crows, one watched me. Somewhere in the distance, the new road hums with activity. You can hear it faintly on clear mornings. Wagons on gravel, traders calling, bells, the sound of purpose. It doesn't reach here. Your wife stopped visiting, not out of cruelty, but because it hurt to see you like this. A man chained to a post with no links. She left food by the path for a while, then she stopped that too. You can't blame her. You don't remember when your hands began shaking. It started subtly, just a tremor when lifting the coin weights. Then your grip softened, the pole felt heavier, the ledger harder to close. Now some days you can't hold the quill steady, but still you write. Sometimes about tolls, sometimes about memories. Once saw a knight argue over 2 deniers. Child tried to pet the ox, it bit her. Old man paid with a carved button, kept it anyway. Does the bridge miss them too? You wonder if the bridge notices the silence, if stone remembers footsteps, if the grooves worn into its middle will ever smooth out, or if time will just turn it mossy until it looks like a hill with a hole. And what of you? What is a toll keeper with no tolls? You tried leaving once. Walked to the village square, stood in front of the smithy, listened to the hammering, watched the boy you once knew shoe a mule with practiced ease. No one recognized you. The boy glanced up, nodded politely, and asked, "Need something, sir?" You said no, and walked back. You slept in the booth that night. The roof leaked. A rat stole your bread. In the morning you opened the gate anyway, just in case it rained that day. Cold spring rain that soaked through your cloak and made the wood smell like mildew. You waited, blinking the water from your eyes. No one came, and now you sit by the bridge each morning. Ledger in your lap, quill dry, looking down the empty road until one afternoon. You hear something. Not cartwheels, not boots. A bell faint, soft, a single chime. You rise slowly, your back protests, your legs shake. You lean forward, squinting down the path. A child stands there, alone, holding a bag. He's staring at the gate. You take a step forward. He doesn't move. You call out, your voice rough with disuse. "Crossing." He nods. You reach for the pole. It creaks as it lowers. The rope strains. The child walks across the bridge, shoes squelching with each step. He doesn't speak. He doesn't hand you a coin, just passes. And for a moment the world feels right again, like something has remembered you. You write it down. Boy crossed, brown cloak, no toll, smiled. You don't sleep that night. You sit by the booth, listening, waiting, but no one else comes. And the next morning your body doesn't rise with the sun. The booth is still. The ledger is open, the last line smudged by rain. They find you days later, or maybe weeks. No one is sure. A shepherd sees the pole, half lowered, and goes to investigate. He finds your body slumped against the ledger, hands folded. The Lord no longer collects from this post. There's no steward, no dispute over the coins, just silence. They bury you by the bridge. No headstone, just a wooden marker with the word portier. Eventually, the wood rots. The booth collapses. The bridge sags, moss-covered and hollow. But sometimes, just sometimes, when a child wanders too far or a traveler loses the road, they say the wind still whispers at the crossing. Not a warning, not a threat, just a voice asking, "Do you have the toll?" You like candles, their soft glow, the way they flicker gently in darkened halls. You imagine them lighting stone chapels, castles, and quiet bedrooms. A symbol of peace, warmth, prayer. But behind every candle, there was a man boiling animal fat in a wooden shed, gagging from the smell, hoping he wouldn't vomit before the wax set. This was the tallow chandler, and his life stank. Let's walk through it. Slowly, carefully, because the closer you get, the worse it smells. We're in York. The year is 1384. The city's walls are crowded with noise, trade, and mud. Just beyond the meat market, tucked into a narrow alleyway where the wind never reaches, sits a small workshop. Low ceiling, open door, a fire pit in the back, and everywhere, fat. You can smell it from down the street. The tallow chandler's job is simple in theory, make candles, but not from beeswax. That's too expensive. Beeswax is for monasteries and noble weddings. It smells sweet, burns clean, and costs more than a poor man's weekly earnings. Tallow is what the common folk get. Tallow is animal fat, and not just any fat, the kind scraped from slaughtered sheep, pigs, goats, and occasionally cows. Collected from butchers, sometimes days old. Kept in burlap sacks or barrels until the chandler gets to work. He wakes before dawn, not because the sun demands it, but because the smell is worse in the heat. He tries to work while it's still. Cool? First he renders the fat, that means melting it. Over fire in large iron pots. He stirs the congealed mess until it becomes liquid. Bits of flesh float to the top. Bone chips settle to the bottom. The air fills with the thick, choking odor of rot. If you breathe too deeply, you gag. If you're new, you vomit. If you've done this for years, you still gag, just quieter. Then comes straining. The rendered fat must be filtered, poured through coarse cloth to remove gristle. The cloths are reused, always. They harden with residue. You scrape them clean with a knife, but never truly succeed. Now the dipping begins. Wicks are cut, usually twisted linen or hemp, sometimes thin strips of rush. You dip the wick into the fat, then hang it. Let it cool, dip again, hang over and over, 30 times, 40. More if the candles are large. The candles build up slowly, layer by layer. Your arms ache. The fat burns your skin if it splashes. The floor is slick. Rats live beneath the boards, and flies, gods, the flies. They buzz constantly, drawn to the warmth, the filth, the open buckets of congealed grease. You wave them away with one hand while you stir with the other. The candles, dry on racks. Bent iron hooks line the walls. Each row sags slightly from heat and time. You test each candle with a twist. If it cracks, it's ruined. Too dry, too fast. If it bends, good, but it's never really good, because tallow candles reek when they burn. A mix of scorched meat and sour oil. They smoke, they sputter, they spit sparks. But they're cheap, and cheap is all most people can afford. So you keep making them. Every day more fat arrives, sometimes fresh, often not. During feast days or slaughter seasons, the supply overwhelms you. You fall behind, the pots boil over, your hands stay blistered, your clothes never lose the smell. You try bathing. It doesn't help. The stink sinks into you. People avoid you in the market. No one wants to stand downwind. Children point. Even beggars wrinkle their noses. You eat alone, always. Bread, pickled onion, cheap ale. You wipe your mouth with a sleeve already stiff from grease. And still you make candles. You deliver them in bundles, wrapped in twine, stained with tallow. To the baker, the brewer, the midwife. You pass monks who won't meet your eye, nobles who wrinkle their noses. You pass windows lit with beeswax, and you wonder, does anyone know what you've given them? Because without candles there is no night, no reading, no prayers, no warmth, just darkness. And in that darkness, you, the chandler, are forgotten. But maybe you prefer it that way. Because in the shadows no one smells you, and no one sees the wax burns on your arms or the sores between your fingers, or the way you sometimes talk to the fire. Just to feel less alone. And now you ask yourself, if you walked away from the fat, from the flame, from the stench, would the city even notice? The fire is dying. Not completely. It still simmers, a dull orange glow licking at the sides of your iron pot. But it's lower than you meant to let it fall. You were distracted, counting your stock, scraping fat off the floor with a flat-bladed knife, watching flies drown in the cooling tallow. You were thinking about that cough, the one that started last week, the one that hasn't left, the one that tastes like smoke and old oil. But you stir the pot anyway because it's what you do. The rendered fat thickens in the cold. Your fingers tremble slightly as you dip the bundle of wicks. You move slowly now, not from weakness but from years. The heat from the fire used to sting. Now it just makes your skin feel awake. Every chandler learns the same things. Keep your wick straight. Never let the fat boil too long. Always skim the scum off the top, and always sell fast, because tallow spoils. It turns. It becomes soft, sour, brittle, and a spoiled candle ruins your name. Not that your name means much. You were never part of a guild. The wax chandlers' guilds formed in the cities where beeswax mattered, where men in robes debated purity and profit margins. But tallow was for the outskirts, for peasants, for the stink streets. Your workshop is a shed. Your sign is a scrap of wood with a scorched crescent. Your tools were inherited: iron hooks, a three-legged stool, a cracked scale, and now the town is changing. The cobbler 2 doors down has closed. Moved south, someone said. The brewer was buried last month. Fever. His daughter tries to run the barrels, but they taste thin now, watered down. Fear does that to people. No one buys candles like they used to. They hoard coins. They pray. They sleep early to avoid lighting a flame. And you feel it, the quiet panic that creeps through towns before a famine, or a war, or a plague. You ask fewer questions now. You just dip, hang, wrap, and hope the candles sell. Some nights, a merchant sends for you. A shipment of tallow bound for the coast, 40 bundles rushed. You don't ask why. You work until your knees give out, until the fire dies on its own. You sleep beside the drying racks wrapped in your coat, the air sour with scorched fat, and you dream of things that don't stink. You dream of beeswax, of golden light, of sweetness. You've seen it once long ago. A noble procession, candles tall and pale, carried by servants. Their flames were smooth, clean, almost blue. No sputter, no smoke, just light. You wanted to touch it, to smell it. You never got close. You woke that night choking on your own smoke as your fire hissed back to life after the wind blew the door open. Now, even the idea of beeswax feels like a sin. Like imagining clean air in a pit of manure. But the boy doesn't know that yet. He's new, maybe 10, maybe older. It's hard to tell under the dirt. He came looking for work 2 days ago. Said nothing at first. Just stood near the rack watching the candles drip. When you finally spoke, he didn't flinch, just asked, "Do they always smell like this?" You laughed. It hurt your chest. Now he helps you stir, slowly, clumsily. His fingers blister easily. He doesn't complain. You don't ask his name, no need. He'll either learn or leave. But something about his silence is familiar. It reminds you of yourself, years ago, when you first stepped into this stink and thought, maybe this is better than hunger. You catch him watching the fire sometimes, not with fear, but with hunger. The kind of hunger that says, "Let me stay," so you let him. You show him how to cut the wicks, how to stretch them between nails on the wall. You teach him how to layer the dips. Too slow, the candles wilt. Too fast, they crack. You warn him not to stir the fat when it hisses. You let him get burned once, just a splash. So he remembers. He learns fast, and suddenly, the work is quieter. Not easier, not cleaner, just shared. And that changes. Something. You catch yourself talking to him. Just a few words. Where to store the twine. How much vinegar to use for cleaning. You even mention the beeswax. Once. He doesn't react. Just nods. And then one morning, you wake to find the fire already lit. The pot warmed. The boy stirring slowly, humming something under his breath. One of the candles is crooked, his fault. You don't correct him. You just sit down, saw slow, and let the warmth crawl back into your fingers. The shop still stinks, the flies still buzz, the fat still clings to everything. But now when you dip the wick, you don't cough as hard, and you ask yourself, maybe this is how it was always meant to be. Maybe the flame was never meant to smell good, only to burn, steady, even when no one remembers the hands that made it. You don't notice the change at first. It creeps in slowly, like winter fog beneath the door. The boy grows taller. His hands no longer blister. He moves with the rhythm now, stirs without watching, dips without dripping, scrapes without slicing the wick. You no longer need to remind him to tie the bundles tight or to hang them away from the damp wall. You just watch, and in watching you begin to wonder, If you've become unnecessary, you still work, yes, but not with the same force. Your arms tremble when lifting the heavy cauldron. Your legs throb when you squat to scrape the hardened tallow off the floor. You need to sit more often, you sleep longer. When you cough, it rattles deeper. The boy notices, but says nothing, and you love him for that, because what would you say anyway? That the fire you once controlled now feels too hot, that the smoke catches you sooner, that even your sense of smell has dulled, or maybe it's just that you've smelled the same thing for 30 years. You stopped keeping track. There's no calendar in the shop, no holidays, only seasons marked by how quickly the fat melts, only time measured by how many wicks you dip before your hand gives out. The world outside moves on. You hear it, the i.e. Cobbler's old shop is now a spice vendor. You smelled cloves one morning and nearly wept. The baker's daughter married a linen merchant and moved to Bristol. You know because she once bought candles for the wedding and left a silk ribbon. As payment, you keep it in your coat pocket, still, but the work continues. As always, because people still need light. No matter how much the world changes, no matter how clean, how elegant, how new, the sun still sets. The dark still comes. And in the corners of that darkness, people still reach for a flame. You've given them that. Every day, every night, without thanks, without pause, and now you feel it. That pause. It comes one morning, slow and strange. You rise late. The boy, almost a man now, has already lit the fire, stirred the fat, cut the wicks. He doesn't ask why you're slow. He simply hands you a stool and keeps working. You sit, you watch him dip. 1, 2, 3 times, perfect rhythm, no splatter. You glance down at your hands, cracked, calloused, wax-stained. They look like someone else's, heavy, foreign, and you realize he doesn't need you anymore. Not really. The thought should sting, but it doesn't. Because now, someone else knows. Someone else remembers the heat, the rhythm, the smell. Someone else can carry the flame, and so you stand like you slowly. You shuffle to the fire. You take the ladle one last time. You stir just once, just to feel it. The fat ripples, the smoke curls. The light flickers against the walls of the shop, casting shadows you know too well. Then you turn away. You walk to the back room. You lie down on the pile of old burlap, and for the first time in years you rest, truly rest. You don't hear the fire crackle. You don't smell the fat. You don't feel the smoke in your lungs. You've gone out, quiet and unnoticed, like one of your candles snuffed by a whisper of wind. No monument, no song, just a shop that still smells of rendered grease and a boy who keeps dipping, one candle at a time, and long after your body is wrapped in linen and burned in the same fire you tended for decades, your candles will still burn. In kitchens, in workshops, in cradles and graves, they will smell terrible. They will smoke and spit and stain the air, and no one will know your name, but they'll have light, and maybe that was enough. You walk into a temple and you see columns, tall fluted white, marble smooth as skin. You think of gods, of statues, of symmetry. You don't think of the man who cracked his knees pulling that stone from the mountain. You don't think of the quarryman. You should, because before the Parthenon, before the statue of Athena, before the architraves and plinths and temples, there was the sound of hammers on raw rock. And beneath that sound, grunting, coughing, silence. Men choked, in dust before the gods were ever raised. Let's go to Mount Pentelicus, a ridge of white-grey limestone northeast of Athens, a place that gave its name to an empire's beauty, Pentelic marble. You don't find it at the surface. You dig, you carve, you chip it loose in blocks as large as oxen. You, the quarryman, are one of 100 laborers, hired, sometimes enslaved, sometimes both. You don't speak during work. The dust chokes your voice. The rhythm of picks and wedges is music enough. Your hands blister in the first hour of the day. Your nails are permanently split. Your knuckles swollen. There's no shade, no breeze. The sun stares down without blinking. Your tools are few and simple. Iron chisels, bronze picks, wooden mallets, wedges soaked in water, driven into cracks to split the rock by force of expansion. There is no dynamite, no pulley system, no cranes, only men and sweat. And the endless white noise of stone breaking. When you strike wrong, the rock tells you it splits crooked. It rings with an off sound. If you're lucky, it just ruins the slab. If you're unlucky, it shatters back at your face. Your foot is already missing a toenail. You don't remember when it came off. You only remember the blood in your sandal. The quarry floor is uneven, layered with chips and dust that never clears. You breathe it. You eat with it on your lips. Your teeth feel like grit. You spit grey. And your lungs? They don't hurt. Not yet, but they feel full. As if the mountain is filling you back in, as if one breath at a time it's reclaiming your body. The overseer walks the rim. A slave himself, maybe. Or freeborn and cruel. He shouts, but not often. He doesn't need to. Everyone here knows the rhythm, knows the quota, knows what happens if you fall behind. You're paid in bread, onions, and diluted wine. If you work fast, you might earn an extra fig. Sometimes a wedge of cheese so salty it burns your tongue. Luxury. You're not carving statues. You're not decorating pediments. That's for artists in the city, men with clean fingers. They get praised. You get stones too heavy to lift alone, and yet the temples depend on you. Without you, no column stands. Without you, no philosopher walks the stoa. Without you, no god sees sunlight. But no one thanks you. You finish your shift with a shoulder. That doesn't rise right. With a thumb split to the nail. With grit in your eye that won't wash out, you piss dust, you cough blood. You try not to look down the slope. It's littered with broken stone and broken men. One worker, young, strong, careless, fell last week. His legs snapped like olive wood. They carried him away. You haven't seen him since. You don't ask at night. You sleep on flattened cloth in a stone shelter near the edge of the quarry. You dream of falling. You always do. In the morning, you eat stale bread and start again, and the thought creeps in. How long before your body gives out? Not in a blaze, not in a song, just one day you fail to lift the chisel, your grip slips, and they replace you. And the stone you started cutting, someone else finishes it. They load it onto a cart, drag it to Athens, lift it onto the temple floor, and when the people look up and gasp at its beauty, no one wonders who bled into its cracks. You stop feeling your feet by mid-morning. The marble cuts through your sandals, no matter how many layers of rags you tie underneath. The chips collect between your toes, slicing your skin, drying your soles into stone. You try not to look down anymore, because the truth is, there's no soft place to rest in a quarry. Even when you sit on rock. Even when you sleep, you dream in grey. There's a foreman now, new. He doesn't speak much Greek, came from Thessaly or Thrace, no one knows, but his whip speaks loud enough. He walks the ridge above the pit, watching the work, not with anger, not with cruelty, just indifference. Like a man checking grain sacks or sheep hooves, you are a unit of muscle. A replaceable one, he points. You obey. He doesn't know your name, maybe never will. The block today is larger than usual, chest high, over 1 meter long. You'll cut it from the belly of the ridge, shape it roughly, then help load it for transport. It will take 4 of you to move it. Maybe 5 if the ropes don't hold. You start with chisels, thin iron notched from years of strikes. One man strikes while another holds. Then you trade. You always trade. If you don't, your arm goes dead before midday. When the cut line deepens, you hammer wooden wedges into the crack. Dried wood. Then you pour water over it. Slowly. Let it swell. The wedge expands, pushing against the grain until the mountain moans and releases its grip. If you're lucky, the slab comes clean. If not, it fractures. Useless. 2 days lost, the foreman won't beat you, but your food will be halved, and the next block doubled in size, so you work with care, but not too slowly. That's the cruel trick of it. Speed breaks your body. Caution starves you. Around you, other crews are at work, shadows in the heat haze. You see a man collapse, not from injury, just from thirst. He twitches. No one helps. You keep striking, keep hauling chips, keep pretending your chest doesn't feel tight. Your partner today is a boy, 17 maybe, first year in the quarry. His hands are soft but his shoulders wide. He hasn't learned to pace himself. He strikes too hard, too often. By midday his palm splits open. You tear a strip from your tunic and bind it for him, not out of kindness, but because if he bleeds onto the marble, the foreman will mark the block as spoiled. Blood stains white stone deep. By afternoon, the cart arrives. 2 oxen. A rickety frame. You use logs as rollers, wedges as brakes. One man calls cadence while the rest push. You lift. Your spine aches. Your knees pop. The block shifts. You shout. Someone slips. The cart jolts. The foreman grunts, but doesn't intervene. It's your problem. You get the block up, you tie it with hemp, you lash it with doubled cord. Then you watch as it rolls away, down the mountain road toward Athens. It will take days to arrive. When it does, it will be shaped further, smoothed, polished, placed in a line beside other blocks just like it, faceless, heavy, clean. Priests will walk past it. Philosophers will speak in its shade. Dancers will swirl beside its base. Statues will rise above it. And no one will say, "This block crushed a man's foot before it ever reached the city." Or, "This edge was cut by a father who never saw. His son again." Or, "This chip here near the corner, that's where a worker coughed so hard he couldn't hold his chisel steady." No. That's not what marble is for. Marble is for glory, for memory, for art. But for you, it's just weight. You walk back up the slope. The sun is lower now, the tools are gathered, the fires are lit. Someone is boiling lentils in a cracked pot. You sit, you eat, you stretch your hands and feel the ache ripple up your arms. The boy thanks you. You say nothing, there's nothing to say. Tomorrow there will be another block, another cart, another slip of rope and moment where your ribs feel like they'll crack. And all for what? Not for fame, not for beauty. Just for a coin, a place to sleep, a mouthful of bread. And maybe, for the quiet thought that when the Parthenon is built, when the torches light the columns and the singers raise their voices to Athena, you'll know. Somewhere inside those stones, your breath is buried, even if no one ever finds it. The sky turns purple at dusk. Dust hangs in the air like smoke from an unseen fire. The marble chips shimmer faintly in the twilight. Not beautiful, just endless. You watch them as you eat. Another bowl of boiled lentils. A crust of dry barley bread. You chew slowly, because your jaw aches too now. The quarry doesn't. Sleep. Even in the dark, someone is always coughing, someone sharpening a chisel, someone whispering in prayer or cursing the gods. You can smell the blood under the bandages. You can hear the soft groan of stone cooling in the night air. You lie down on cloth you never wash. The straw underneath is damp again. The quarry soaks into everything. Your eyes sting, your chest feels heavy, you don't dream anymore. You just close your eyes and let the weight press down. But the morning comes anyway. It always does. The boy's gone. No one knows where. Maybe he slipped on the slope. Maybe he joined a transport to Athens. Maybe he collapsed and they buried him in a shallow grave under broken chips, as they sometimes do. No one speaks of it. You're given a new partner, older, silent, missing an ear. You nod to each other and begin. The block is jagged, the marble flawed. You know it before you strike. But you strike anyway. Your back twinges on the third blow. By the 8th, your hand cramps. By the 12th, your breath is short. But you don't stop, because stopping invites attention. And attention gets you replaced. You remember when you could lift the iron tools with ease, when your legs didn't tremble by midday, when you could run your hand along the fresh-cut edge of a block and feel pride. Now you only feel grit, and pain, and something worse, the creeping knowledge that your strength is running out. There's a story that circulates among quarrymen, always the same, that one of the blocks at the base of the Acropolis has a name carved deep inside it, invisible now, hidden under layers of polish and perfection. Not the name of a priest or architect, not a king, but a worker, a quarryman, who struck the stone one last time before it killed him. Some say the overseer let it pass, that no one checked, that the name was sealed in, buried in the marble like a curse or a prayer. You don't know if it's true, but some nights you imagine your name too, carved into a block that will never crack, never fall, never be seen, a quiet rebellion against the forgetfulness of stone. By the afternoon your arms are numb. Your skin is coated in a layer of chalky dust. You drink water that tastes of iron and ash. You piss brown. Your ribs ache from coughing. You spit blood. No one notices. No one is well here. The master sculptors in Athens speak of divine ratios, of golden sections, of perfect symmetry. They forget that perfection is heavy, that it breaks bones before it inspires poetry. The block you cut this week may become part of a temple column, or a statue base, or it might crack in transport and be dumped in a ravine. You'll never know. You're paid 2 obols today, enough for wine. You consider it. But wine softens your grip, and tomorrow's block won't care how tired you are. So you tuck the coins in your sandal and return to your cloth. You lie still. The stars blur above. The wind whistles between the cut stone. You hear a man weeping softly. You don't look, and somewhere down the slope you hear the creak of a cart rolling toward the road. Another block gone, another breath of yours inside it. And someday, when the columns rise, white, gleaming, perfect, the people will gaze. In awe, they'll write hymns, compose verses, bow before the gods who live in stone, but they'll never ask, who carved this? Who bled for it? Whose cough echoes in its base? They won't know, but you will, because you gave your body to beauty. And beauty never gives it back. No statue marks his grave, no book records his deeds, no sun lit a candle for his soul, and yet, for 26 winters, the kingdom's roads were salted, the harvests counted, and the debts recorded in a hand so precise it could copy a king's name perfectly. The hand of a tax clerk. Let's go to France. The year is 1422. The 100. Years' war still grinds on. The king, Charles VI, is dying, mind torn by ghosts, body failing in his palace. But far from the court, in a damp stone chamber above the tannery in Bourges, sits a man with a quill. He is not a noble. He is not rich. He is not known. He is a commis d'État, a tax clerk, charged with recording dues from merchants, bakers, cobblers, thatchers, and fishermen. The ones who never attend royal feasts, the ones who pay for them. The job is simple. You tally, you write, you repeat. The clerk's desk is narrow, wedged beneath a drafty window. His ink freezes in winter, splatters in summer. The ledgers are bound with rough leather, stained from years of candle soot and salted fingers. He writes by daylight when possible. Ink is expensive and candles cheaper, but not by much. He dips the quill, scratches names into parchment with looping letters, always in triplicate, once for the town, once for the crown, once for the fire, if anyone asks questions. He wears gloves with the fingers cut off. His nails are black. His spine curves to the left from leaning too long. His knees ache when he stands, which isn't often. He writes, Guillem the Cooper, 5 sous, unpaid. Jeanne of the Orchard, 2 measures of cider, accepted. Missing. Cart levy, assessed fine, 3 deniers. No one thanks him, no one invites him to supper. No one trusts him, because a clerk never knocks unless he needs something, and everyone owes something. He carries a small satchel with seals and wax. If a man protests, he can affix a red stamp, meaning the case is to be reviewed by the baillie. If the protest is loud, he affixes black, meaning the man's name is sent to Paris, and sometimes he adds nothing. Just a note to himself, a slash in the margin. A name circled once in brown ink. The townspeople fear him, but they shouldn't. He doesn't make the rules, he only records them. But try telling that to the butcher whose pig was seized last week, or the widow fined for missing her market stall payment, or the miller who insists he already paid, though no record shows it. They see a thief in robes. They don't see the man who wakes in the night coughing blood into cloth, because the tax clerk is dying. He doesn't know what it is. The wet heaviness in his lungs, the pink tint to his spit. There are no doctors here, only remedies, boiled garlic, honey and wine, heated stones on the chest. None of it helps. Still, he climbs the stairs every morning. Still, he dips the quill. Still, he writes, because someone must. If the ledgers are late, the steward arrives. If the accounts don't balance, the whole town pays. Punishments come in barrels, higher taxes, revoked trade rights, food seized from carts, so he keeps writing. Even when his hand cramps, even when he forgets the day, even when he coughs so hard he blacks out at the desk, no one notices. The priest walks past him every morning. Never blesses him. The tavern keeper doubles his price when the clerk enters. Children shout rag scribes and run. He is not welcome because he brings no bread, only numbers. And when you live in the margins of parchment, you die in them too. But once, long ago, he had a brother, a younger one, killed near Rouen, arrow to the side. He kept his brother's last letter folded in the back of the ledger. No wax, no seal, just a short scrawl. If I die before I return, tell mother I didn't. Run. He reads it some nights, then writes the next tax entry without blinking. He hasn't spoken to anyone in 2 days. His voice has thinned. His breath wheezes. But his numbers are correct. Always. He checks twice. Then a third time, because the crown may forget your name. But it never forgets your debts. And yet, even now, as he grips the quill with fingers, turns blue from cold, he wonders, if he stopped, if he just didn't write tomorrow, would the king know, would anyone? The ink has bled through the parchment. It happens more now. Your quill trembles, your grip softens, the letters wobble. You blot with shaking hands. You lean forward to steady your wrist. The numbers must be legible. Always. No matter how tired you are. No matter how cold. Because illegible numbers mean suspicion. Suspicion means correction. And correction means punishment. You don't want to see another steward's seal arrive with a demand for clarification. Not again. You still have bruises on your shoulder from the last visit. Not for theft, not for fraud, but for writing 13 where it should have been 3. An honest mistake. They don't believe in mistakes. Not in the Crown's accounts. You sit now for hours without moving. Your legs go numb. Your lower back pulses like a drum. Sometimes you feel a creeping warmth in your foot. You think that should worry you. It doesn't. You just shift and keep writing. The town sends fewer messengers now. They drop ledgers outside. Are your door instead of handing them to you. Even the butcher's boy who once asked to be your apprentice, wide-eyed, curious, no longer comes near. He saw you cough once, saw the blood, and ran. You don't blame him. You smell different these days, like ink, wet wool, and something sour. You haven't bathed in 4 weeks, not because you're lazy, because you're tired. Even filling the basin feels like 2. Much. You wipe your face with a cloth, rinse it in vinegar, press it to your eyes, but your sight is fading anyway. You hold the page closer. You squint. The candlelight flares in the glass of your ink bottle. You feel heat along your cheek. Then, pain. You've leaned too close, your skin is blistering, you blink and pull away. Another mark on your face. Another reminder, you're made of parchment now, dry, fragile, flammable. Still, the numbers don't write themselves. So you begin again. Pierre, son of Auguste. 1 copper, unpaid. Charlotte, widow, basket tax denied. Thatch, levy, 2 pence delayed, marked with seal. The entries blur together. Whole days pass now without your leaving the room. You keep the shutters closed. The daylight hurts. The cold seeps through the floor. You eat dry lentils soaked in ale to soften them. You drink water only when your throat is too raw from coughing. Sometimes you see faces in the wall, not real ones, but echoes. Your brother, the old steward with the black boots, the priest who once said your soul was stained by ink. You don't. Speak back. You just write. Your hand is bruised now, permanently blue from ink and cold. The bones in your fingers click when you move them. There's no strength left in your wrists. You prop them on cloth. You wrap the quill with twine so it doesn't slip from your grip. And still you balance the books even though the debtors are dead, even though the town has stopped asking, even though Paris will never read these ledgers. You write because if you don't, the silence becomes too loud. But one evening, and to soft knock at the door, you don't answer. A child's voice quiet. My mother says, she says you helped us with the cart tax. You blink. You remember the case. The wheel was broken. The woman had nothing. You marked it paid and said nothing. You burned. The duplicate. The child waits, then slides something under the door. A strip of linen, wrapped around a piece of cheese. You reach for it, hands trembling. The cheese is hard but warm in your mouth. You chew slowly. You don't cry. Your eyes just water. You don't know why this kindness feels like shame. You sleep that night with the cloth in your hand. You dream of nothing. You wake cold, but the ledger is still open. You write again, and as you do, a strange thought enters. Your mind. Maybe this is prayer, not the words, but the counting. Maybe this is how the forgotten speak to God. In numbers, in debt, in silence. The ink bottle is nearly empty. You turn it gently, coaxing the last black globs to the edge. You dip the quill again. The scratch on the parchment is weaker now, fainter. But still, you write. Not for the king, not even for the steward. You write because you have always written, and when a man does one thing for so long, he forgets what else he might do. Outside, it's winter again. Snow fell during the night, light and dry. You heard it before you saw it, hushing the town, like a wool blanket over the rooftops. Footsteps are fewer now. Carts don't pass beneath your window. The cold keeps everyone inside, but not you. You are always inside. You're not sure when you last left the room. Days ago, a week. The stairwell down to the street is darker now. Mold creeps along the wall. The banister wobbles. You meant to fix it once. That memory is years old. Your legs ache constantly. They tremble when you stand. You don't stand much anymore. You piss in a clay jar and pour it out the back window when you can. If you forget, the smell reminds you. You bathe in vinegar and cloth. You clean your fingers with salt. Your nails are nearly gone. But your ledger is clean. Always clean. The latest entries blur together. Names you no longer know. Men who are probably dead. Women who married or fled. Children who outgrew their debts. Theonet, market stall waived due to fire. Allard, horse tax, incomplete. Unknown, cart appeared without permit, destroyed in flood. Each line straight, each number balanced. Your quill snaps. Finally, you stare at the broken tip. There is no replacement. You turn the quill in your hand. Consider carving another point, but your hands won't steady. Your vision blurs again. You cough, and it racks. Through you like a wave. Something wet hits the floor. You leave it there. You sit back. You look at the room. The stack of sealed ledgers in the corner, 23 of them. Bound in twine, stamped, organized by season. Nobody asked you to do that. You just did. Because someday, someone might want to know, even if they don't know you. You feel sleep pulling at the corners of your thoughts. But before you lay down, you open the drawer and take out the letter, your brother's, creased and soft now. If I die before I return, tell Mother I didn't run. He never did. Neither. Did you? You've sat at this desk for 9,000 days. You counted. Once you've written the names of every baker, weaver, herder, debtor, orphan, beggar, and thief to pass through the parish in a quarter century. You recorded every barley measure, every grain tax, every bribe declined, every debt forgiven. You forgave more than most knew, but you never forgave yourself. Not once. You lie down slowly. The blanket is thin. The floorboards creak. The window breathes cold air. Your hands fold across your chest. Your lips whisper numbers, a lullaby in base 10. And then, for the first time in years, you do nothing. You don't wake the next morning. A week passes before anyone notices. The priest knocks. No answer. The door is forced. They find you en dessous. The floor wrapped in wool, mouth slightly open as if mid-recitation. The ledgers are stacked perfectly. The ink bottle dry, the quill split, the final page half filled. They search for your name. There is none. No family, no wife, no title, only columns, totals, ink. A town official skims the ledgers, mutters, correct, then nods. Reliable man. They bury you behind the church where the ground is firm. No stone, just a small wooden stake, no inscription. Just a whisper that the taxman is gone. And within a year the books are forgotten. Filed in a storeroom, molded, burned during a riot. But for a time, in parchment and ink, you held the chaos at bay. You named the world and made it make sense, quietly, faithfully, alone. And though no one remembered your name, your numbers never lied. You think of chimneys and maybe you picture smoke curling from a rooftop, a fire crackling below, a pot of soup, a home warmed by coal and comfort. You don't picture the child inside the chimney, climbing, coughing, choking, alone in the dark, but he's there. And he's 8 years old. It's London, 1840. The streets are wet with coal soot and early fog. Carriages rattle down the cobblestones, gas lamps flicker weakly, and down a narrow alleyway near Spitalfields, a boy is waking up in a burlap sack. He sleeps on ashes. He coughs before he speaks. He doesn't remember the last time he woke. Without soot in his throat, his name is William, at least that's what he was told to answer to. He belongs to Mr. Kettleby, a master sweep with 5 boys, 3 brushes, 2 dogs, and 1 boot that everyone fears. William is the smallest, which makes him the most valuable, because Victorian chimneys aren't wide. They were never built for people, but soot builds up and someone has to clean it. So Mr. Kettleby sends boys like William, underfed, underwashed, and underage, into the flues. He's up before dawn, chewing stale bread if there is any. A splash of water on the face, a kick if he's too slow. Then he's off, tools slung over his shoulder, or just his own body, because for most of his work he needs no brush. He is the brush. The first house is grand. 3 floors. Old. That's dangerous. Older chimneys are narrower, more twists, more sharp edges, the bricks crumble. Some have nails. Others were patched with broken glass. But William doesn't hesitate. He strips to his underclothes, ties a cloth around his mouth, takes a deep breath, and climbs in. His job is simple. Go up the flue, scrape soot, kick it down. Twist your body. Go round bends. Use knees and elbows. Don't stop. Don't cough too loud. The lady of the house is still sleeping. The dark is absolute. The walls press in. You climb by instinct, by muscle memory, by desperation. The soot gets everywhere. Into his eyes, into his fingernails, into the small cuts that never heal. He can't scratch. There's no room. If he panics, he's stuck. Boys die this way, but they call it stuck fast. You wedge in too deep, you scream, you stop breathing, and then, well, then someone else finishes the job. But William doesn't panic. Not yet. He makes it to the top. Scrapes as he goes, kicks, coughs, spits. The chimney is clean. He slides down slowly. Hot soot burns his arms. His hair is blackened. His mouth tastes like cinders. The maid won't look at him. She hands the coin to Mr. Kettleby, not to William. The man pockets it, grunts, tells William to hurry. 3 more houses before noon, and if it rains? Too bad. Wet chimneys are worse, and the soot becomes sludge. You slip more, you cough more. But the work doesn't stop, because soot pays, and soot means survival. On rare days, William gets something extra, a coin slipped by a kind cook. Heel of cheese. Once a coat with only 1 sleeve, he shared it. That was a mistake. Mr. Kettleby took it back. The nights are worse than the mornings. Sore, cold, coughing. They sleep in a shed. No beds, just straw. The older boys have given up, crying. William still does, but only when no one can hear. His chest aches. His legs shake when he walks. Sometimes he bleeds when he urinates. He doesn't tell anyone. What would they do? He's a sweep, a climbing boy, one of hundreds, replaceable. But here's the cruelest part. He sings. In the mornings, as he walks between jobs, he hums, softly, half to himself, old songs, rhymes, street tunes, because something in him still believes in noise, still believes in tomorrow, even if tomorrow means another chimney, another burn, another breath of black. And sometimes before he sleeps, he asks himself, if I were gone tomorrow, would anyone even know? The second house of the day is worse than the first. It's a bakery, warm, thick with flour, walls already coated in grime. The chimney runs behind the oven and splits halfway up. A T-junction. That's bad. It means William will need to brace his legs against opposite walls and twist his whole body to navigate the turn. He doesn't get a choice. Mr. Kettleby growls, "Up you go, wretch!" and William nods, stepping out of his shoes. The bread smells make him dizzy. He hasn't eaten since dawn. He places his hands against the soot-stained bricks and climbs. The chimney narrows immediately. Not all houses were built with chimneys in mind. Many flues were added later, crammed into tight walls and corners. This one is barely 9 inches, across in places. The brick is dry. The soot flakes. Some bits feel sharp. William's knees slide against them. His ribs scrape every time he shifts. He twists. He breathes in dust. He keeps going. At the bend he stops, tries to turn. There's no room. His chest tightens. He exhales slowly. Feels panic begin to rise. Not now. He presses his back into one wall, pushes with his legs, inching himself up, and around the corner. The soot thickens, it clogs his nose, he can't wipe it away, his eyes sting. A lump rises in his throat, but he doesn't cry. If you cry in the flue, your tears carry the soot into your eyes. Chad burns worse that way. He keeps moving. Above him, the top of the chimney glows slightly. Daylight. That's all he needs. Just a bit more. Just a few more kicks. He makes it. At the summit, he stretches out an arm and gives the signal. 3 taps. On the brick. No thanks, no coin, no pause. Just the next flue. By late afternoon, William's legs are shaking uncontrollably. He leans against a soot barrel and retches. Nothing comes up. He hasn't eaten. The older boy, Jacob, drops half a crust beside him. William nods his thanks, chews, swallows, stares at the sky. He hasn't seen the sky from a rooftop in months, only the inside of chimneys. Jacob used to sing, not anymore. His lungs rattle when he breathes. He's 12, but looks 20. No teeth on the left side of his mouth. His hands are permanently black. William knows not to ask about the scar on his neck. Jacob doesn't talk about the time he nearly died, but William remembers. He remembers the scream, the scrambling, the silence, the priest who came with a candle, the way Mr. Kettleby blamed. The chimney's angle, not the boy. Jacob came back after that, but he wasn't the same. Now William watches him cough and wonders, how long do we last? Is it years? Months? 1 chimney too many? There's talk on the streets now that Parliament is considering a ban, that they'll stop sending children up flues, that machines will do the work, that men with brushes and rods will be enough. But not yet, because poor families still need coin. Because masters still need boys, because chimneys still clog and William still fits, so he wraps a rag around his waist, spits out blood and ash, and starts walking to the next house. And in the quiet between footsteps, he wonders, will anyone remember the boys who cleaned the flues once the machines arrive? Or will we vanish like smoke? It's snowing now, not heavy, but enough that the soot runs down the gutters in grey rivulets. The street smells of wet coal and chimney smoke. Boots splash through slush. Horses snort clouds of steam. But up high near the rooftops it's silent. William is halfway through the last job of the day. This chimney is taller, steeper. The flue curves sharply in the middle, the kind builders used to call devil's elbows. You're supposed to clean them from the top down with brushes, not by sending a boy through. But the landlord says it's too urgent. He wants it cleared before his guests arrive. So up goes William. His legs tremble as he climbs. His hands are raw, fingers split under the nails. The brick walls close in. It's hot. The fire was only doused an hour ago. Still warm. The soot sticks to his skin. He kicks it down. Feels it coat his shoulders. Somewhere below, Mr. Kettleby curses at the smoke spilling into the room. William doesn't hear him. Not really. He's too focused. One arm forward, then the next. Elbows, knees. Twist, squeeze, push. His ribs scrape against the brick. His cheek brushes something sharp, a nail maybe. He tastes blood, keeps going, there's less air now. He stops, just for a moment. He breathes, shallow, broken. His lungs wheeze. The flue narrows suddenly, unexpected. He wasn't told. Tries to shift, but he's stuck. He exhales, tries to shrink, kicks downward. Nothing moves. The soot begins to fall in sheets around him. He blinks, one eye sealed shut by the black. He twists harder, pain shoots up his side, still stuck, and now the panic. His chest tightens, he claws upward, the brick slices his fingers, his arms cramp. He can't breathe. The soot clogs his throat. He gasps, but it brings nothing. Below, someone's shouting, "A maid, Mr. Kettleby." They don't know, they don't realize he's stopped moving. He screams, or tries to. It's just a choke. His voice doesn't carry, it's smothered before it leaves his mouth, and now silence. Real silence, not just the quiet of soot and shadow, but the kind that presses against your eardrums and says, "This is the last thing you'll ever hear." William's eyes close, his legs stop kicking, his body slumps, and the flue stays quiet. They don't find him for hours. By then, it's too late. He's cooled, curled, as small as a child can be. Mr. Kettleby curses about the delay. He calls for help. They break through the chimney wall with hammers. A boy from another shop watches from the street and asks, "Was he new?" "No," someone says. "He was one of the small ones." They bury him in a pauper's grave, no marker, no priest. Just a thin plank laid on wet earth. It reads "Climbing Boy Unknown." His name doesn't appear in the ledger, but his soot-streaked fingers are still in the walls, in every drawing room that glowed with firelight, in every hearth where tea was poured, in every nursery warmed by coal. He was there cleaning the flue, so others could sleep safely. And when years later Parliament finally bans child sweeps, no one says his name, just the act. A child died, and the fire burns on. You've probably imagined the scene before, a quiet monastery, stone walls, candles flickering, a monk seated at a desk surrounded by scrolls, quills, and a sense of peace. But the peace is a lie, because in the corner of that monastery, in a room barely warmer than the fields outside, sits a man whose fingers are blue, whose breath fogs on the parchment, whose ink has frozen in the bottle. A scribe, and he is cold, always cold. Let's travel back to 12th century England. The monastery of St. Cuthbert, perched in the fens, surrounded by fog and marsh. The wind slips through every crack in the wall. The hearth is kept low. Wood is scarce. Smoke is dangerous and silence is sacred. The scriptorium has no warmth. It has benches, desks, candle stubs, and men who sit bent for hours, copying Latin from one page to another, word by word, line by line. Mistakes are punished. Ink is precious. Time is the enemy. Your name doesn't matter here, only your steadiness. You are Brother Thomas, you are 30, you feel 80. Your back curves from years of leaning. Your eyesight fades. You see ghosts in the margins. But you still hold the quill, a goose feather trimmed and hardened, dipped in ink made from soot, wine, and iron salts. It stinks. You smell it always. On your fingers, in your breath, in your robes. You try to write quickly, but the ink thickens in cold, your hand trembles, the letters wobble. Mistakes mean scraping the parchment with a knife. You must not tear it. Parchment is made from animal skin, sheep, calf, goat, stretched, scraped, dried, costly, valuable, scarce. You have 7 pages to finish today. You are on the 4th. It is nearly noon. You haven't eaten since before sunrise. You won't eat again until after prayer. You don't mind the hunger. You mind the silence. Because it's not gentle silence, it's watching silence, judging. The other monks write in rhythm. You hear quills scratching like claws. One coughs, another mutters. Someone drops a stylus and whispers a prayer, not because it's broken, but because it's loud. Noise is frowned upon. Laughter is forbidden. Questions are discouraged. You were not born a monk. You were the son of a merchant, but you had a talent, letters, so they brought you here. At first you felt proud. The world outside was chaos, plague, fire, theft. But here was order, ink, meaning. You were told your